talk about the 20 ideas idea, where James Altucher would just say, write 20 ideas, doesn't matter if they're good, terrible, it's like brainstorming, but you just do it on paper for yourself, and you can just generate.
AirPods or earphones or whatever, put some music on or a podcast on and just be at one with everything.
If we did this and this and this in this situation, it'd be really good. And then suddenly I was like, why don't we do that all the time?
Yeah, the Google effect is mad. Like, there's a lot of older people, or people more probably towards your generation, will be thinking
Joe's generation. Inspiration Nation, hello, Lee Kemp here for another week on the podcast as Joe rudely talks over me. Back as always with the rude Joe Noya and the ever polite Ryan Bodyface. How are we doing, guys?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you.
Good, Lee, thank you. How are you doing, mate?
Not bad. That completely threw me, chucking a few extra words in my intro there. I didn't know where I was going. It's like I'd veered off into a dark tunnel and didn't know the direction. Thank you, everyone out there, for listening, watching, joining us live on Instagram every single Tuesday, 8:30 GMT. Check us out on social media at ListenToIN, ListenToIN. And of course, Joe is Jose Noya, Inspiration Nation. Search him everywhere. So, We've mucked up a little bit here. And by we, I of course mean Joe and Ryan, because what we've worked out, like we did last week, is we're each going to pick a topic each week to do. So Ryan had last week. This week was supposed to be me, but neither Joe or Ryan reminded me that it was supposed to be me. So due to their fault, the order's going out a little bit, and Joe is going to be giving us their topic. So in a classic way, Joe, what are we talking about this week?
Going back to the old school, isn't it? They're going back to old school.
Do you like my high level of accountability there for my own responsibilities?
I wouldn't expect anything less from you.
Living it.
Living that life. Right. So this week we're going to talk about, where do ideas come from? Where do actually our ideas come from? So for me, it's like, when you have a problem, when you're trying to solutionize, where do they come from? Where do you come up with the ideas? Like we call Inspiration Nation. When you're trying to figure something out, suddenly you get like a light bulb moment. So I want to sort of dig into a little bit about maybe difficulties we've had, and actually how we've solved that problem through the power of ideas. And ideas, I think, are real trainable skills. So for me, just to give you an example, is that every morning I have to come up with my 1-minute video, and I have to come up with a topic to talk about. So there's going to be some sort of idea. So what do I use? So for me, I use something that's going to inspire me, right? So inspiration is my word that I want to make sure that happens. So every morning I read something, I'll read inspiration material, maybe it's Evan Garmoger's top 10 rules of success or something, will speak to me. So I think, that's quite a good thing. I can build on that. And that'll be an idea that I talk about on the 1-minute video on Instagram. And that can turn into a blog. So the blog, for instance, the way that comes about is that I'll just think about experiences in the week, and then an idea comes to me, okay, I can build something around that. And that's where my ideas come from. But I want to know, where do they come from for you guys as well? And have you had anything happen where you've had a problem, and suddenly you've thought, that's it, that's how it works? And I know, Lee, you talked about getting up and going for a quick walk to sort of let your brain roll with it a little bit. And then you come back and you've then been able to solve the problem. Whether we detach from, not being in the problem by coming out of it, do we then get an idea of, if I just walk away, let my brain sort of on the back burner? And there's a lovely book, I think, that you mentioned before, Lee, called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff.
Yes.
And in that book, he talks about ideas and putting it on the back burner and letting your mind sort of just literally think about it, and then suddenly a solution comes up.
Percolate, I like to say. Percolate the ideas.
Percolation Nation. Yeah, that's a really good one. That. So actually, I use that on my train, that percolate. I've got a percolate idea. So I've either got that. I definitely must have got that from you. But that's what we want to talk about. Also, where did that actually come from? Like, can you think, they come to us, don't they? But where did that actually come from? So I'm going to throw the ball to you guys. So any of you guys just want to do that? I'm just going to wave some people. So there you go. Go on, off you go. Anything?
There we go. That's it. Was that a wave to people joining us on Instagram like that, Joe?
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah.
So I've talked a bit before in previous podcasts, or for the conceptual bit, and I'll give the real example. I think it's really important to have a creative space. Now, what I don't mean is a room that's full of whiteboards and bean bags and funky music and inspirational quotes. Although, Joe, I know you would absolutely love to have one of them.
No, you could read me like a book. I would absolutely love that.
But it's what is your space to do that? Because you've got to give your mind time to be creative. And, you know, we were talking just before, we don't normally intersperse a lot of right now real life and what we're doing, but I am feeling a little bit frazzled at the moment. And I think it's because I'm in a space where I'm doing a lot of doing right now. I'm jumping from activity to activity to activity to activity, and there's not a lot of that creative space in between it. And I think when your mind's in a doing phase, it's more difficult to come up with solutions and step back and see the bigger picture. So mine, and this isn't the only example of it, but one for mine I know that works quite often, I know I've talked about it for you guys before, is, you know, working during the week, lots of stuff going on, etc., etc. And then quite often I try and designate a Saturday where I don't do that sort of stuff. I'll do things around the house, a bit of housework, but brain off stuff that you don't have to think about. Starting to get stuff done, and then, you know, I'll go out, I'll drive to the shops and whatever it is, and there's a point, and quite often it's on that drive where my brain goes into creative mode when it's been able to switch itself off from the doing mode by just giving myself space to do nothing but think. So while I'm doing the menial activities, my brain starts to tick over with things, and all those ideas, you know, problems, I suppose, that are stuck in the back of the brain, ideas start to come through. A lot of the time, that's where I start to think of ideas to do with this, like the podcast, of what we do, ways to do things. And when my brain's starting to flow, that's when it will happen, which I say isn't a literal space, but it's creating an environment for myself to have those ideas going. And I think that's... Oh, did I cut out a little bit?
Just a little bit, yeah. Unless that was me, but
hopefully that all made sense there. But that's what it is. It's creating that space so my brain can have the ideas, and I think that's really important. And I say sometimes when there's a lot of doing, it does become hard to do that. I think that's a challenge.
There was another place you get creative. I don't know if you remember, you mentioned the podcast.
Is it in the bedroom?
Oh, come on.
Ryan called him out.
Come on. I thought you was going to say another room, and I was like, oh, that's just as grim. But
are you going to say the shower, Joe?
I would, yeah, because you said shower time. You said that's a place.
And I used that today. I had a day where it got to the end. It was a really good day, and I finished up with a really good meeting with someone. But I'd like 5 things open on my screen, and it had been constant meetings and stuff. And I was just like, so I went and had a shower. Just listened to a bit of podcast while I was in there and decompressed. And that is, again, that's a good place just for the brain to go into idle mode. But I'd say driving in the shower are my 2 kind of key. And I say it's not about the place, it's about the mindset, and that can happen anywhere.
Yeah, I love that. Ryan, what about you?
It's not always a place for me. Sometimes it's a person. Sometimes it's having a conversation with someone. What do you mean, you? What do you mean, you? Sometimes it's having, as I say, a conversation with someone rather than being somewhere. It just means that especially when it's somebody that's really quite on your wavelength and you can just bounce things off of, and that can be anywhere. That could be at work, it could be at home, it could be down the pub, or whatever. That's how a lot of what I find my good ideas come from, is kind of talking them out with people. However,
do you remember a place where you have done that, Brian? Like, can you think of an example where you had a place and you had a difficulty or something, you need to come up with an idea? Did you have? Can you remember an example that happened?
A lot of it's kind of work related, I guess. So there's not too much I can really say, but I don't know. No, I can't think of anything on the top of my head that's social or outside of work. A lot of the stuff is work stuff. But you're faced with a problem, like, I don't know, we've only got 4 people in, but we have 5 people's work this week. How do we go about solving that problem? And there's a few ways you could go about it. But then it's coming up with a solution. I find coming up with a solution is just bouncing ideas off of someone, or it used to be a person I report into. It could be one of my peers now. It doesn't really matter. You just bounce those ideas off someone until you kind of go, that one sounds like a good idea. That will stick. But yeah, but I am also a fan of a car. A car is a car used to be my one of my two like escapes, if you like. The other one being a snooker table or a pool table. Plug in some AirPods or earphones or whatever, put some music on or a podcast on, and just be at one with everything. I guess I don't know. I think everyone has that kind of thing or that hobby or that place, as you suggest, where they can just turn off. But for me, it isn't always a place or an activity. It can just be talking to someone. Only a select few people, kind of people, as I say, you have those kind of brainwave connections with. But yeah,
I think that's really important. The soundboarding thing, I think, is really important. Being able to discuss things through. And you made me think there, Rob, when you're talking about it. I remember there was, and again, work context, but another company, but they're a supplier for us. They provide some stuff, and I was talking with someone from there, and we were just talking through some ideas. And I still remember there was a bit where it hit me. We were saying, what if we did this and this and this in this situation? It'd be really good. And then suddenly I was like, why don't we do that all the time? And it was like blindingly obvious once we'd got there through the conversation, but it only happened because of the back and forth that we are having over the idea, which actually is now quite a fundamental part of one of the things we do within the business, which just came from absolutely nowhere. So I think that having people to bounce ideas off or come up with ideas, or sometimes you can present a problem to someone else with fresh eyes, they can come up with a solution, and vice versa. They might have a problem, and because it's fresh eyes, that's where you can really start to have that kind of sharing of ideas and coming up with suggestions. And it's normally a collaboration for a lot of those sort of things.
Yeah, and I think this is where coaching works really well. I found this a lot in coaching where, you've got someone with like even, today, there's people who are like crushing these we've got this certain thought, we've got this project at the moment where people have got to crush certain meetings and solutionize and come up with ideas. And so what I do, as the coach, I actually don't know what this idea is going to be. So really it's all in the power of the question. So there's some people who are just absolutely amazing. They're so good at what they're doing, but what my job is to push them, go, okay, so this is really great, but how can you take it to another level? What would make it even more impactful? And then you usually find when you give them like a 5-second, 10-second window, you sit quietly and there's no pressure, they get an idea. And it's absolutely amazing to think, because they think, I don't know what to do. And so, well, actually, just have a think, just what's come to mind? And then they'll just come up with one idea, then that links to another idea. It's almost like that mind mapping piece where you just go, right in that eyes and ideas, and it comes to another one. So back in one of the episodes, one of the archives, I don't know where you guys can remember it, but we talk about the 20 ideas idea, where James L. Tucher would just say, write 20 ideas, doesn't matter if they're good, terrible, it's not brainstorming, but you just do it on paper for yourself, and you can just generate, and that gets your mind into solutionizing. So your mind gets into, I think, practicing generating ideas. The more you practice generating ideas, the better you get at it. And I think it can atrophy if you don't. And so someone to push you and say, okay, so what could be a good idea for that will push you. For me, go on, you're going to say something, Lee? Go on.
No, I'm affirming what you're saying, Joe.
Yeah, and the other thing with me, for meditation really works for me, and like watching the videos in the morning or something like that, something to sort of get a creative space. So when I wake up, I have that meditation piece, but then I'm there ready to go. And I think that for me is my space. And you've got the shower, like you say, got someone have the shower and everything. So that for me is really good. Also asking people, so what else? Just ask that question. So what else? What else could you do? Like that gets people to go beyond and go to a different level with that rather than thinking. So questions are really powerful to generate ideas as well. And sometimes asking yourself a question around what else, like, so for me, for these podcasts, and Lee said, I've got no idea for the, I haven't come up with a, what do you call it? A topic. Actually, I've got a topics that I've written out before. So this one came from
I have decided to forgive you guys for that, by the way.
Thanks, Lee. We appreciate
That's
that.
all right.
It's not my job to make sure that you know what you're doing. That's your job to know what you're doing. I'm not having this.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I'm with you, Ryan. Yeah, I'm with you, Ryan.
Don't gang up on me. This isn't how this works, guys. This isn't how it works.
Exactly how it works. Get used to it, Lee. This is how it works.
Joe and I work in as a team.
I just want to shout out to our audience. Don't forget to check out InspirationNation.org.uk. Head over there for everything Inspiration Nation. Full details of the coaching service, sign up to Joe's weekly newsletter there. Just click on the blog section. And of course, there is the Inspiration Nation store where you can get all your merchandise, hoodies as being modeled by us if you're watching on YouTube, face masks. I'll put mine down somewhere and I can't remember where it is again, but I could model that. I'm going to look for it while I'm talking.
Come on.
T-shirts and of course mugs. Get the mug shot on the camera as well. All your Inspiration Nation goodies and everything else.
We might be getting a
Yeah, all three on the screen.
Yes.
Go over inspirationnation.org.uk.
Yeah, everything inspiration. Love it. Yeah.
You know, I was you two ever heard of an app called like Time Hop?
Yes.
Basically, Time Hop, Joe, is an app that gives you. I think you'd really like it. Actually, no, I'm sure he knows what an app is. But it's an app that tells you what you posted on social media or what photos you took on your phone a year ago, on the day, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever. You can link your social media accounts to it, and it will tell you what you did or what you posted on the day that you're on. You can't pick any random day, but it's only always the day that you're on. And there's no real depth to this conversation, but mine came up. I think what day are we today? Tuesday, maybe Sunday. It was a year ago that we did the 16 personalities test.
Really?
Yeah.
I can't believe it was that long ago.
The one where we had the different. Was it? Well, I think it was. No, it wasn't 16 personalities. It was the ranking of what's important to us.
Oh, was that the? Yeah, that was the values, wasn't it?
The values. Yeah. That was a year ago since we did that.
No, that's mad, isn't it? That's mad.
And that only feels like 6 months ago, literally.
It does. It just shows you, how quickly time flies, doesn't it? When you're having fun, right?
This week's episode sponsored by Time Hop.
Other apps are available.
Yeah. So don't Facebook do a similar thing, didn't they? Where they sort of
it works exactly the same, yeah. But you can get this across Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, your photo album on your phone, whatever. I'm sure there's other apps you can use.
Well, thanks for that, Ryan. Because maybe it's something I don't know if I take. Well, I suppose it'd be videos, Inspiration Nation videos that would come up on mine. That was all that come up on it. But so that's the ideas. The ideas really. So, but do you know where they actually come from though? Because where do they come from though? That's what I want to know.
Oh, we're going to get more conceptual, are we?
Yeah, I want to know where they come from. Where actually do they? Because like the video game thing, right? So, back in those days, I played Resident Evil, one of the first, the first Resident Evil games on PlayStation 1, going back to my gaming days. And I'd have this problem, and then I'd go to bed, I'd wake up and go, or I'd be going to bed, and just about going to sleep, I've solved it. And then I'd try it the next day and it worked. But where does it actually come from? Because your brain obviously works it, but I want to know, where do these things come from? Where do we download them? Do we what? I don't know.
I think it's all in there. I think problem solving is a skill.
Yeah. You know the answer as soon as it happens. It just takes your mind a couple of hours or a little bit of time for it to go, oh, there it is. And it comes to the forefront of your mind. It's like,
that's it.
You can compare it, I guess, to just life generally. Like, I don't know. I don't want to get allow what I'm about to say, but like when people were dating and stuff, it's like, well, you'll never find the love of your life until you stop looking for the love of your life. The same pattern kind of ensues. Like, you don't find the answer to your problems until, in a way, you stop thinking about the answer to your problems.
Can I just say, for those listening and watching, just before we went live, Ryan told us a good story, and he used 2 or 3 different voices during the course of it, and that was the 4th Ryan voice that he's busted out for us today. So he's the king of the voices.
So if you want me for your audio books, just let me know. All right.
Book him through inspirationnation.org.uk.
You can find that.
But I think you're right, Ryan. That's a really good analogy for it. It is. I think and you have, because there are people who say they're not very good at problem solving, but they probably are. You just need, it's like everything. It's what you tell yourself. But the more open you are to it, the more you see it. And everything that had happened, things you've tried in the past, things you've seen other people do, they're all in your brain somewhere. And like Ryan says, I was going to use another bad analogy, which is like Bitcoin. So Bitcoins are created there's a problem, and then loads of computers run at that problem, and eventually one of them solves it, and it's there. And it's like that in your brain. Your brain is just going through all your archive of all those things until it stitches together the right problem for you, and it can come out. And that's a mixture of problem solving ability, how much you are open to learning from the past. And then that creative thinking space, which is where we always talk about not being afraid of mistakes, because actually the more mistakes you've got logged in your brain, the better your decision making and your problem solving becomes going forward.
What you're saying, failure is good, right?
100%.
So failure is good. And I was just thinking, but I mean, like, because, do we actually know because sometimes I'm just thinking, do we actually know what the solution is? If we even haven't had the experience, but because we're thinking about it, we're actually giving energy or focus to the problem. And that's where our brains focus on it and try and solve it. Because I think Brian sort of picked up on actual focus, like when he did the voice, and I'm going to try and copy the voice, but it's not going to be very good. Oh, I'm going to look for the love of your life, but I can't do as well as Ryan, the chief officer on this, the chief voice officer. Go on, Brian. Go on, Lee. You're going to say something then. I saw you go to the mic.
I was just going to say, you can also book Joe for voices at a cheaper rate than Ryan through InspirationNation.org.uk.
Much cheaper rate, because Ryan's the king of the voices.
Other voices are available.
Lee's at a totally free, discounted rate.
I pay you.
So thinking about the focus I think the focus is a really important piece around that. So if you do say, well, I'm not going to find the love of my life, and you put yourself in that frame of mind, then you won't, because your mind is just focused on that direction. It's whatever you look at, you can aim towards, right? It's like, and I think that is a really big point that Ryan made there. And I think that's a really valid point. So if you want to solve problems, what we're saying is, you've got to focus on the problem to like solve the problem, then take a bit of decompression time to like resolve it. That's what I'm getting from this.
Yeah, you fully have to understand what the problem is before you can begin to break it down and solve it, I guess. A lot of problems will be really simple, like, oh, I dropped my mug and it smashed all over the floor. How do I clean this up? And then instantly your mind goes to dustpan and brush, or I don't know, the Hoover. You know what I mean? But
I just shout for the butler and he comes and does it for me.
Yeah. Considering where you live, that doesn't surprise me. But I think the more complex a problem becomes, the more you need to understand what the problem is before you can begin to solve it. I've always been
that's that space thing, isn't it? Because you can step back and see the problem. And I think it goes one of two ways. It's either you can step back to see the whole problem, or step back to realize the problem isn't as big as you think it is when you're right in the detail.
There is that, yeah. I think the bigger the problem feels in your mind, the more you have to think about understanding it. And then once you feel like you've understood what the problem is, that's when it's time to kind of back off and think of, well, not think about it at all really, but just back off and don't take it out of the forefront of your mind, and you'll find a solution. I always used to be really clever with computers and technology and stuff. And that might have just been because they were built for my kind of eyes, I guess, being that I'm, relatively young or whatever. But I feel like
there were computers when me and Joe were young.
No, but yeah, obviously yes. But I mean, like, just as I like new Microsoft softwares that come about around an age where I was between the ages of 8 and 12. Yeah. I was able to solve the problems that you would encounter on a computer by knowing the basics of how to work a computer, because this won't let you go in here, you read why, and then you find a workaround. Whereas these days,
you start to understand the rules.
That's it. Yeah. These days, if something doesn't work on a computer, for example, you can just Google what the problem is, and Google will be like, "I'll do this," and you'll be like,
"Do you know what I had?" And this is going to be my topic for next week. I had a conversation with someone today about this very subject. And when you're talking about ideas, Joe, not so much ideas, but I had inspiration for something I want to do at work, and I wanted to use for a topic as well for this conversation. And it's so weird because literally like 11 o'clock today, and it was on that exact thing you're saying there, Ryan, about the Google effect.
Yeah. Is it somebody I know? Because I feel like I've had this conversation also like last week recently with somebody as well.
We'll mention their name off air.
Okay. But yeah, the Google effect is mad. Like, there's a lot of older people, or people more probably towards your generation, will be thinking
Joe's generation
will be thinking that, kids these days don't have to learn anything. Google will just answer it for them and stuff. And like, to a point, that is true. Like, some people would need a degree in law, or have a master's in certain elements to understand things. But these days, I could Google what's the maximum sentence for Grand Theft Auto, and it will just tell me what it is, you know. Whereas I don't think that's a crime in the UK, so I think that's all right. But
so I'll save it for next week. But this person I was talking to actually they'd watched a podcast recently, and they articulated so well the science behind why the effect of that. It's really good. But it's now all coming back to me. This is what we will talk about. It's good. It almost
he did have a subject. He did have a subject.
He forgot it. That's what it was. He's like trying to blame us, Ryan. That's what he's trying to do.
He did have a subject, everybody at home, but he just decided he didn't want to use it.
He's trying to blame us, everybody at home. He's trying to blame us.
We're all friends here, guys. There's no need for blaming Lee for stuff that happens.
No, just one way in it, Lee.
So, Joe, where do ideas come from? Good question.
Yeah, it's a really great question. And actually, talking about the Google effect, I like the YouTube effect. That for me is where I go. I know I'm getting on in years, but I don't even look at it. I think I'm as young as you guys, so don't worry about that. I go to YouTube. Like if I've got a problem with anything, I'll go YouTube first. What's it say on there? And they're amazing teachers on YouTube, honestly. And so my ideas always YouTube. So to answer your question, where do ideas come from? Ideas come from your brain. I've got this understanding the problem. It's stepping back from the problem, and sometimes getting help with the problem, I think. And for me, it's my meditations. For me, having a space. And I think you talked about earlier about an environment, and I think you can all create our environment about ideas and where they come from, and get in the best place for you. And the idea creation is actually a skill, and the more you practice it, the more you use it, the better you get at it. And for me, sometimes it's not you that's going to solve it. Maybe you do need someone else to help you come and solve it, or that someone who's good at that particular skill, whatever. So for me, there's tons of stuff that comes out of this. And as I say, even today, Lee's even remembered his own subject matter. So that's an idea that came to his head. It came back to him. So even just talking about ideas and thinking about where they come from generates solutions for you to step forward and make progress. And coaching is massive around ideas and what you can do differently. Don't keep doing the same things. What's something else you can do? What can you try? So that's what I'm getting from this. But I think we need to go, before we go, we need to make sure that we take the 3 biggest takeaways. So for me...
I was just going to jump in there and say, what are the takeaways, Joe?
Oh, yeah. I did ask you to do it, as you put it in the podcast, didn't I? So go on, Lee, you ask it, because I did.
So Joe, what are your takeaways? And I think you might be able to give us 3.
No, you're going to do this because I need your ones.
So for me, I know it's only supposed to be 1, but can I give you 2?
Yeah, of course you can. We'll take 2.
And just quick and snappy. Number 1 is about giving yourself space to have that space. And that's something I need to remind myself about. And number 2, to use a corny old phrase, is a problem shared is a problem halved.
I could write a book with all the phrases I never want to hear come out of your mouth again.
What are your takeaways, Grifster?
What's your biggest takeaway from the convo?
Problems are rarely as big as you think they are.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah, I like it.
And Jose Eduardo Noya, what is your takeaway from today?
Well, you took mine. Well, you didn't take it, but mine was about having that, like the space or an environment to have those thoughts. So
that's good. I was greedy and I had 2, so that gives us 3, doesn't it?
Yeah, so we've got give yourself space for an environment. I'm going to put there. So guys, just remember having that environment and space important. Remember the problem shares, problem halved. So maybe getting someone else on the problem. To have fresh eyes. I think I was talking about you had certain eyes for certain. So I've got a computer problem. I'm going to Ryan. And the third one, problems are rarely as big as you think they are. Ryan, I think that's a real golden one, because actually we get involved in such a detail we can't step back, or breaking a problem down to smaller chunks, which I think we talked about before on the podcast. So where do ideas come from? They can come from anywhere. You can get inspired. Lee gets inspired. We can all be inspired by videos, information. So I think they're 3 great takeaways there.
Fantastic stuff. Well, thank you everyone for joining us, as you do each and every week, across all podcast platforms as well as on YouTube. Just search for Jose Noya Inspiration Nation. Check us out on social media at Listen to IN, Listen TOIN, and of course Joe is across all platforms again, Jose Noya Inspiration Nation. If you're checking out on Instagram, you can watch us live at 8:30 GMT every single Tuesday. Of course, inspirationnation.org.uk for everything Inspiration Nation related. And if you like what you are hearing or what you are watching, leave us a review, hit that 5-star button, tell friends and family, get the audience growing. Right, just for me to count us down next week, and we're back with me forgetting what topic I'm going to do next week. 3, 2, 1. InspirationNation. Catch you guys later.
So guys, I want you to know, what was your single biggest takeaway from this video. I want you to put it in the description below and hashtag it with InspirationNation, because it's important that you take something away and work on it so you can get to your next level. Now, so you can catch all our other Inspiration Nation podcast episodes right over here, so go check them out. And also, don't forget to subscribe, because that will tell you when your next video goes live by you hitting that amazing bell. So until next time, it's Inspiration Nation, and I'll see you right over there.